Joe Rogan, Graham Hancock, alternate theories on human history, and why that's all important. Let's check it out.
Well, that's where I get the hope. I get the hope in this young generation that is growing up with the internet, that does understand that there's a lot more out there than just what they're being taught in schools.
Yes.
Yeah, so the context here is they're talking about all of these different theories about human history, catastrophes, ancient civilizations that were more advanced than we ever would have thought. And that the old guard of archaeologists and paleontologists and all that grew up with an ideology that they really had to stick to. And there's a younger generation of people that aren't really interested in sticking to that ideology, but are more interested in truth. So that's what they're talking about.
Yeah. This is where the hope lies, and it lies in every area. And it's why one of the intriguing things that has happened with me, and your show is an important part of this, is that when I go around giving public events, doing a public presentation of my work, the demography of the audience is extremely interesting. And this is true whether I'm giving the talk in Britain, whether I'm giving it in Canada, whether I'm giving it in America. Part of the audience are older people who read me in the 1990s, people, right? Who got onto my work with Fingerprints of the Gods in 1995,
Sages.
and they've stuck with me.
Those people.
And they've carried on reading my work. But another part of the audience, and a very big part of the audience, consists to a large extent of young people, most of whom are men, but there are women amongst them as well.
Why are a lot of young men drawn to Graham Hancock and his work? Well, I think, for one thing, they listen to Graham on Joe Rogan. There's a lot of young men who listen to Joe Rogan, so they show up to Graham's thing. Here's the other reason, though. Young men in particular are not content with the story that we have been told, that you are the end product of a process that didn't have you in mind. I'm speaking generally about evolution here, which I know is not specifically, I'm not detailing out evolution, but generally speaking, the story is there was no purpose in life. It's a cosmic accident. You're the end product of a process that didn't have you in mind. And young men reject that story because it's lame. There's no battle to be fought. There's no victory to be won. There's no fair maiden to be rescued in that story where everything is just random, cosmic chance. Everything's reduced down to chemicals. That's not fun. Nobody likes that story. So here comes Graham Hancock saying, you know what? It seems like maybe there's more to human history than we were taught. That's one of the reasons why his work, the work of Randall Carlson and other people, is so important right now, I think, for the conversation.
And what those mainly young men come up to me and say at the end of the event is, we first encountered your work on Joe Rogan's show, and it completely opened our minds. It changed. I've had so many young men say, this has changed my life.
Yeah, this has changed my life. Orientating your story with the human story and realizing that the human story is, there's a much more compelling story going on. Now, for me, I'm a biblical Christian. I read the Bible. I think that story is compelling. I think that story lines up really well with a lot of what Graham and Randall and other people are saying about the human history that has been overlooked, particularly that the further back you go, the more advanced people seem to be. Now, they're not flying around on cars like the Jetsons or something like that, but these people, ancient people, were incredibly smart. They were incredibly sophisticated, and that flies in the face of the evolutionary theory that we evolved from lower life forms. If we evolve from lower life forms, when we go back in history, we should see lower life forms. We go back in history and it seems like humanity is almost more advanced. That, to me as a Christian, is compelling because I believe we came from the Garden of Eden. We came from a place where we are communing with God. And as such, I think Adam, Eve, and the ancient people were very sophisticated. They're very intelligent. So that story is far more compelling, whether you are a Christian or not. You realize that that having that story is much more compelling than the story of just evolution, which is kind of a random process.
And then I asked myself, well, why should a different take on the past change people's lives? Why should people feel that their lives have been changed by a different take on the past, which I add they would not know about unless you'd had the good grace to bring me on your show. These ideas would not be known, but they are known because of the amazing outreach of your show. And the answer to that question, why does it change a person's life, is that once we realize that we have been misinformed about our past, that everything that we've built our idea of who we are upon and of where we're going as a culture may be founded on falsehoods and perhaps even deliberate lies. Once that is realized.
Yeah, so who we are is founded on this idea of history, where we came from. And if you're telling me that I'm here because of evolution, I'm here because of a process that didn't have me in mind, that is kind of random, then what does that say about me? That I'm just a walking sack of chemicals and guts and stuff. And again, there's no victory to be won. There's no battle. There's no courage and love and things like that kind of go out the window. So what we say about our past, what we believe about our past is very important. I think that's why Graham and these conversations have an appeal.
Then all the questions about the nature of the society we live in become open. And people, young people, are feeling the need to take an independent path, not to follow the path that has been set down for them by previous generations. And in some way, and I'm very gratified to hear this, the fact that I'm an elder now, I'm 69 next birthday, the fact that
You look great.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, we need elders. We need old and young people to come together. We need the wisdom of older people and the ability to think outside the box from young people. This is Socrates. This is actually what got Socrates in trouble. Going and mentoring young men because they have the ability to think outside the box. They're not trapped in an ideological framework. Unfortunately, when you have been instructed and you fall into sort of an ideology, it's harder to get out of that ideology. But when you're young and you're forming your worldview, then you're not as bound to that ideology. You can see things that maybe an older person wouldn't be able to see or understand because an older person's worldview and ideology is really firm. So, again, lovely stuff. Lovely stuff. This is what it should be. We should be instructing young men, young women, younger people should find their instruction from the older, wiser sages in their lives. It's unfortunate that we don't have that as much.
The fact that I, as an elder, have consistently pursued an independent path, have been willing to put up with the shit that's been thrown at me over the years, but have stuck to my guns and have continued to add new information to the dossier of information that I put forward. That is, and I'm encouraged to see this, that's found as inspiring by younger people. And what better gift could an old guy hope to leave to the world than a younger generation who feel inspired by that person's work to change the world?
Well, I'm very, very thankful that I could introduce people to you because your first book that I read of you, Fingerprints of the Gods, changed.
I haven't read this book, Fingerprints of the Gods. I really need to. I really should. I'm working through Dr. Michael Heiser's book, The Unseen Realm, but I'm really interested in maybe checking out Graham's book. You should. I'm here robbing things off the internet from Joe and Graham, and so you got to contribute to their work.
Changed my view of the world. I mean, I remember putting that book down after I was finishing, going, "Wow! Like if he's right, like this whole thing is a mess."
Yeah, a complete mess. Because our idea of who we are is very much founded in our idea of who we were.
Our idea of who we are is very much founded in the idea of who we were. The idea of who we are is very much founded in who we were. And this is where things get important to me, because I believe that we are a people that came from a garden where God put people, right? And we lived in communion with God and then fell into sin and fell out of that communion. Now, Graham, Joe, other people don't necessarily go into the Garden of Eden, but I think we should, because if you followed Graham, or if you followed Randall Carlson or any of these guys, a lot of people will start talking about Atlantis as being kind of the early civilized, advanced culture. What if that was Eden? And what if really we are a people who came from a garden where we lived in community with God, and we were evicted from that garden because of sin, and yet God has provided a way back to that life that we're supposed to live in communion with him. So Graham, Joe, others won't go so far as to say that we came from the Garden of Eden, but I think we did. And I think that it's important that we look back to who we were so we can understand who we are. And that story of history is far more compelling than maybe what we've been told over the past 100 years or so. So I hope that's encouraging for you all. And if you enjoy this, share it with other people that you think might enjoy it and contribute to the conversation. And I look forward to being with you in the next one.